Have you ever had a conversation and felt so connected to someone? This was one of those conversations for me. I got the pleasure of talking to Elizabeth Gillette, an attachment therapist, and we dove deep, you guys, into all of the 4 attachment styles. We get honest about our own and how it shows up in our relationships and parenting. And what I loved most about this conversation is Elizabeth's view of not only the weaknesses of the styles, but the strengths that also come with each. And of course, the goal to balance those out. I promise you, you will feel better about your attachment style instead of feeling shamed or labeled. If you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. All right, welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. You guys, I don't know if you've ever done a podcast, but when you have technical difficulties and you finally get on, it's already a great podcast. So, Elizabeth Gillette, welcome to the How We Get Thru podcast. We made it.
Hello, we made it. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like we got our wiggles out now
Yes.
and we're ready to do this.
Yes, exactly. Is it the internet? Who knows? Is it the phone? Who knows? You guys, Elizabeth is an attachment therapist and coach, and we're going to be talking about all the things. I'm so excited. But first, tell me about you. How did you become a therapist, and where is your love for attachment? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So, gosh. All right. So becoming a therapist has been a long journey of doing, some activism work in college and then figuring out how much I loved being with people during really difficult times of life. Having had my own, as soon as I graduated college, I got diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
Yes.
What
So I have
kind?
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yes. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that was a wild ride. And, I was already getting ready to go to graduate school for social work, but that got pushed back another year. And, so when I got to graduate school, I was just wow, I feel like I've lived a lot
Yep.
of life already. And so it just really informed, my desire to support people during these really difficult life experiences. And then, yeah, I think the most honest answer is that I came to attachment work doing my own attachment work and having challenges in relationships and not understanding what was happening, not understanding why I felt like I was the most annoying and needy partner that ever existed.
Yeah.
And getting to this point where I recognized oh, this is a pattern. It seems like no matter who I'm with, I'm always finding myself feeling this certain way, right? Feeling worried, my partner doesn't really want to be with me, or they're going to leave me, or the smallest things make me feel so upset and I can't calm myself down. And so that's really how I found myself in this work, is doing my own work. And then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, I need to bring this to as many people as possible because it is so life-changing.
Yeah.
So that's I think the most honest answer.
I love it. Can you talk to me about when you did that attachment work? Were you in your 20s? This is after cancer, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you trying to get married? What was your life like?
Yeah. So I started doing this work when I started dating my partner, who I've been with now for almost 13 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so we started our relationship and I started doing the things. And I was like, what is happening? Right. And it was one of those things where I realized, I was like, okay, this is the best person I've ever been with, right? This is a person who is showing up, doing the things he says he's going to do. He's communicative. And I'm over here spinning out and doing the dance that I had always done. And it made no sense to me. So a friend of mine recommended one of Sue Johnson's books.
R.I.P. She just passed away.
I know. Gosh, and her work in this field was so incredibly impactful. Especially for me personally, having picked up, Hold Me Tight, which is, one of her best known books. And I started reading it and I was like, Okay,
You got it.
this is
Yeah.
what is happening.
Um,
And so, yeah, so it really changed so much. And I feel like then my partner and I, we had common language for what was going on because I started explaining it to him and I was like, this is what's going on. And I think in these moments, my anxious attachment gets kicked up and this is why I'm acting this way. And I feel like it gave us so much to talk about
yeah.
and a way to talk about it that didn't feel so personal, like I was the problem.
Uh,
And I find now I do emotionally focused therapy with couples, which is Sue Johnson's work. And I find that there's something about that sort of depersonalizing and being able to say, like, oh, this is the relational cycle that you find yourself in. These are the reasons why you're getting triggered. It helps to take the blame away
yeah.
and the shame. And I
Mm.
think that it makes it so much more accessible for people
Yes.
when we do that. We don't feel terrible about ourselves talking about it.
Right. And I think part of the cycle is blaming ourselves or our partner. Like that
Yes.
is the thing to kind of break
Yes.
free or kind of reframe is what I'm hearing you say too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, and there's so much in there too, depending on, and I know we're probably about to talk about attachment
Yeah,
styles,
go
but
for it.
depending on your attachment style, you're more likely to do one or the other of those
Uh-huh.
things. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like that's part of the style is how you approach relationships. It's part of how you feel about yourself. It's about how
Uh-huh.
you feel about your partner. It's about how you feel about the world, essentially.
Mm. And what are the four attachment styles? Or are there more?
Yes, there are four. So
Okay.
secure is the one
Ugh.
that we're all going for and
Uh-huh.
trying to move towards. There's anxious, which is more of like what I was describing earlier, that feeling of like something doesn't feel quite right in our relationship, or these very small issues feel like really big issues, or not feeling like your partner loves you enough or sees you, or, um, it feels like you're constantly sort of spinning or striving for something. Then
Yeah.
there's the avoidance style, which is a lot more of the independent, wanting space, can be
Uh-huh.
sort of like a distancer in the relationship. And we can talk more about, what that looks like. And then there's disorganized, which I think is probably the least talked about style, although I think it's one that we really need to pay attention to, which is more like an approach avoid dynamic where, I want to be with you, but I don't quite feel safe to do that. And so
Uh,
the way that that looks in relationships can be kind of confusing. It can feel sort of like, well, you just said you wanted this, but now I'm giving it to you and you don't want it.
uh,
And it can cause a lot of stress in partnerships too. So, and the thing I'll say too about attachment styles is that we come by our attachment styles honestly. No one chooses their attachment
oh,
style, right? This is a thing
yeah.
that happens as a result of our environment, the relationships that we experience early in our lives, our family systems, those
Uh,
types of things.
yeah. Is there one style that you see the most like trending in your practice? Like, do you see disorganized attachment a lot or that feels more rare?
Yeah, so I think in general it's probably more rare. I do think
Uh-huh.
that because of the work that I've done for as long as I've done it, I tend to draw more folks who are disorganized because
It's hard.
oftentimes it's hard and people will
Yeah.
come to me and they say, I've tried so many things and I don't know what to try.
Uh,
And so I think I see probably a greater number of folks with the disorganized style, but I also see lots of folks with the anxious style because I think those folks are more likely to come to therapy because they
yes.
feel so internally distressed.
Yeah.
However, I also have the pleasure of working with people who are more avoidant too, and that has been such a learning experience for me in this work, and also just
Uh-huh.
such a joy and an honor to be able to see into the experiences of folks with that style too, because you
Yeah.
don't hear about that one as often.
Right. And I don't want to get too gendered here, but would you say majority of women have anxious and majority of men have avoidant? And like we're just generalizing here.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a gendered aspect to it. And I think that often has to do with how we're socialized
Mm-hmm. Right.
growing up.
Raised. Yeah.
And, yeah, for like, if we look at it from that perspective, I think oftentimes women are taught to be more attentive to their relationships,
Mhm.
maybe even more dependent on relationships, dependent on feedback from other people in relationships. Whereas I think that men are often socialized to be independent, to be able to be self sufficient, to not have feelings, to not have needs. And so I think that there's definitely a socialized aspect to that. And I will also say that, of course, anybody can have any
Yes.
attachment style, and most of us have more than one. Like we might have, it's sort of like a pie, if you think about it like a pie.
Okay.
You might have like one big chunk of a certain style, but then have aspects of the other styles as well. So in certain relationships,
Hmm.
a style that you're not especially familiar with may sort of pop up, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be anxious. I'm normally the avoidant one, but all of a sudden I feel so anxious with this person. So I think it really just depends on the relational dynamic too.
I love that. And that brings a good question of like secure attachment. Like,
Hmm.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like it's always the destination. It's like we kind of move in and out of these things. Like we
Hmm.
can't just stay in secure attachment for the rest of our lives, right?
That's right, 100%.
Okay.
And I love the way that you're framing that because it's, yeah, we're always going to be moving in
Uh-huh.
and out of things. And part of this, in the same way that, the goal of nervous system regulation is not to feel
Uh-huh.
calm 100% of the time.
Right.
The goal of moving towards security is not to be secure 100% of the time. It's to feel like you have access to that grounded and centered place within yourself that you can come back to, and that you can develop the awareness to recognize when you move outside of that so that you
Mm,
can kind of come home.
I love that. Oh, that's so beautiful. Because, I mean, there's something that's being triggered within the attachment. And is it okay? I'm a therapist, you guys, but I like don't, I'm like kind of in attachment, but kind of not. So I'm like, maybe do I know nothing? I don't know. So, but there's certain things that are getting triggered in each attachment style. So in my mind, is it also pointing to a need? Like, because sometimes I think we're like, oh, my attachment style, I need to get rid of it. I need a whatever. But what if we were kind of like integrating all of this holistically? What is here for me in this attachment style?
Yes, I love that because each attachment style also has strengths, right? So,
Wow,
like, yes, I know. So,
so
it's like when
sweet.
you look at it that way, if you're looking at it, for example, the anxious style, which
Mhm.
is, the most common after secure. Um, the anxious style is so incredibly attuned, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you can pick up on what's happening in the environment. You can know that something is going on in the relationship, even though the person might not be sharing it. You can be like, something feels off to me. I don't know. You're
Mhm.
probably really good at anticipating people's needs,
Mhm.
right? So you're
Yes.
probably very good at sort of, I mean, lots of people who I know who are, more anxiously attached are really great at like giving gifts or planning parties or planning events or whatever because they're so aware of what people
Mhm.
need and what feels good to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really lovely way to approach it, to recognize that people have strengths in these and the goal
Yeah.
is not to get rid of them. The goal is to feel better in your body and in your
Yeah.
relationships. Because I think that when we're really fully in these different sort of what we would call insecure styles, it can be really uncomfortable because we're basically trying to either be maybe overly involved in relationships or needing feedback from people, or we're trying to completely reject it. And neither of those are sort of like our natural state. We're born into the world with brains that want to connect and
Mm.
want to do that safely, but also want to have boundaries, right? And want to have some like consistency and predictability and
Yeah.
reliability. And those are sort of the tenets of secure attachment.
Yeah. In the safety of
Absolutely.
ourselves and our partners or
Yes.
relationships. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to kind of go through each attachment style besides secure. It's like we know that secure, whatever. But the strengths of each, because when you talk about the anxious attachment style, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really good. And I think where it becomes a weakness, it is when it becomes too personalized. where,
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but like where um, I'm feeling what my partner's feeling and it must be about me, or I must be doing
Yeah.
something wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
like a shame component of
Yeah.
personalization, like this overtly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Yes. Or like I'm so invested in how they're doing that I can't regulate myself
mm,
outside of that. Right. So
yeah,
like if we're not good, if we're not feeling solid or stable in our relationship, then I'm not good and I can't be until I
yes,
find that stabilization within the context of relationship. And I think too, you know, one of the things I'll say about
uh,
that is that I think we can't talk about this without talking about the origins of the
listen,
styles, because when you think about someone who grows up having more of an anxious attachment style, oftentimes they had a parent or a caregiver who was present and attuned some of the time,
listen,
but that might have been inconsistent.
mhm,
So they might have had their parent or their caregiver's attention, and then maybe their caregiver was distracted, or maybe
listen,
their caregiver had their own kind of emotional stuff going on. And so
mhm,
you might, you know, from a child's perspective, they might have that sort of like caring and loving gaze from their caregiver, and then their caregiver looks away. And they're like, wait, where did you go?
yeah,
And there's no sort of predictability in what is going on.
yeah,
And so for that child, basically what they do is they kind of start to look outside of themselves to understand
mm,
what's happening here in the environment that my caregiver is not able to be present with me. And I'm not talking
mhm,
about like, oh, they look away to make dinner.
yes, yeah,
I'm
very
talking
good
about like a
clarification,
deeper, right?
yeah,
Like a deeper, longer lasting kind of pattern.
yeah,
And so that child might sort of lose themselves to understand the environment and then learn
mhm,
how to adapt to what's happening in the environment so that they can get their needs met. Because
yeah,
ultimately, as humans, we want to get our needs met. That's
right,
what we have to do. That's how our brains are wired.
yeah,
And, you know, it's similar when we think about avoidant attachment. They might have had a parent or a caregiver who really focused on achieving or doing. There probably wasn't a whole lot of focus on um, emotions or how you're doing. It's more like what
what
you're
are you
doing.
doing? Mhm,
Or they might have even received kind of like a flat or um, frustrated, or, you know, we can kind of think about what would a caregiver who's focused more on doing be like, right? If they're
yeah,
really pushing achievement, they're saying, well, you should have scored that goal, and I don't understand why you didn't do this. And there's, you know, there's not a lot of curiosity about who you are on the inside. And so someone who doesn't grow up with curiosity about how they are on the inside is probably not going to be all that curious about how other people are doing on the inside either.
right,
So we kind of think about the ways that that can be carried with us throughout our lives. Someone who's more anxious and learns how to adapt to the environment is going to be much more aware of the environment, much more aware of
mm,
what's happening outside of them. So they're going to have more information about that and be, you know, more open or curious than maybe somebody who didn't have any of that modeling.
my gosh, I love that. I'm thinking about in my own relationships too, the, "Are you mad at me?" question.
Oh my goodness.
What's
Yes.
wrong?
Yes. What is happening? Are you mad at me? What did I do?
Yes. Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is so funny because I don't think I did something wrong. It's almost like they're upset and they need to say something, you know? And I'm like,
Yes.
but then also did I do something wrong? But it comes
Mm-hmm.
it's such a normal phrase of like, are you mad at me? Because I don't feel that we're okay or that
That's
you're
it.
okay. So if you're not okay, then I'm not okay. And would you call that codependency in some way?
I mean, I definitely think that there are elements of
Okay.
codependency, um, like woven
Traits.
throughout, yes,
Yeah.
traits woven throughout the attachment styles, because again, it's that thing of like, where are the boundaries here in this relationship? I don't
Mhm.
know where the boundaries are, and that makes me feel insecure. And so that's
Listen.
another piece of this, is that within all of the insecure styles, boundaries are one of those things that are maybe, you know, if we sort of look at the spectrum, that are maybe like too firmly drawn, or maybe even non existent, or so, like with the disorganized style, so unpredictable
Mhm.
or confusing that we feel like we can't fully relax into what we would call like the relational field, because we
Mm,
don't know what's going to happen, because it feels so unpredictable and even potentially scary that
yeah.
we can't know, we don't really know how to be,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
And in disorganized attachment, do you find that people have a ton of trauma that come from is like that what kind of makes disorganized that
Yeah, I mean, I think generally the answer to that question is yes. I think many people who have the disorganized style have had, you know, whether it's kind of to the extreme of like abuse, right? Whether that's emotional abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse, it's usually falling along some part of that spectrum. And that, if we grew up with caregivers who maybe used substances to the point where they weren't
Mhm,
able to parent us properly, or
mhm.
parents who had significant mental health, untreated mental health stuff going on. Even if we think about systems of oppression and poverty and
Yeah.
racism and these different pieces, I mean, those are all aspects of how we learn to relate to the world and how our caregivers are able to tend to our needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, safety keeps coming up. Like if I
Oh,
don't feel the
safety is
world
huge.
is safe
Mhm.
and if my parent is safe, then I will never be
Yeah,
safe.
that's exactly right. And safety is the core of the
Yeah.
disorganized style. So
Um,
safety is one of those pieces where it's like, if I don't feel safety, I'm not able to be in relationship in a true way. It's sort of like that's that piece about the approach avoid dynamic. Like, I love you, but I don't feel safe. And so I'm constantly doing this kind of like push pull, moving towards you, running away, because I it's hard to anticipate what's coming. There's so much
mhm.
unpredictability, and our brains do not do well with that, right? It's like we're designed to connect, but we're designed to connect in safety. If the
Yeah.
safety doesn't exist, then our bodies will override our like ability to connect in a way that feels good.
Man, it
Hmm.
just makes me so sad. Oh my gosh, am I gonna cry? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I like we just want to feel loved and safe.
Of course we do. That's
Like,
exactly
would that
right.
solve every problem in the world? You know what I
I
mean?
think in a
Like,
lot of ways, I think it really
yes.
truly would. I mean, safety is like the thing, right?
Mm,
And Stephen Porges said safety is the treatment. When I think about the work that I do, like the attachment work that I
mhm.
do, so often it's supporting people and feeling safer in their bodies, in their
Yeah.
homes, in their communities. And it's so hard because we could have a whole separate conversation about this, but it's like we can do our hardest work to feel safe, but if we're not actually safe, right? Like,
Right.
if the world is not a safe place,
Right.
if we are discriminated against,
Yep.
if we are, if we walk out of our home and we don't
Right.
feel like we're going to be loved or accepted, if we feel like we're going to be hurt or harmed, it
Listen.
our bodies are like, yeah, okay, thanks for doing all this work to try to make me feel safe, but the truth is that I'm not. So it's
Yeah.
very, I think
Mm,
we're living in a very sort of unique time in that way, where I think we can't pull this work apart from like the environment that we're
yeah.
living in.
Yeah. Oh, so beautifully said. And I
Mm.
I think I I don't know. It's kind of the white male perspective, but uh when it's like your beliefs make your world, right? And it's like, yes, but what if the world actually isn't? And so I just love what you're saying because there's only so much one person can do. And what we need to do collectively is also a big job. And we need to kind of
Yes.
concentrate on that. You know, the people that do feel safe need to create safety for other people.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things too that I talk about a lot in this work is how we can be more welcoming for each other. And I think that there's something important about that too. Like, especially for people who have the anxious style, there can be this desire to have their partners open up and be more honest and be more real. But
Listen.
then when that happens, sometimes people are like, that is not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Shut
now
it
you're being
down.
honest. And yeah, exactly. Now you're being honest. And that's not what I wanted to hear you say.
Yeah.
And so we can sort of be more, kind of critical
Combative.
or even like attacking when that happens. And I say that with all the love in my heart from,
We're both anxious
moving.
attachment
Right.
guys.
Yes,
Spoiler alert.
exactly. Exactly. Yes. So like I say that with all the love in my heart, knowing that I mean, how many times did I do that
Yeah.
myself? And so part of my practice has been how can I navigate my own nervous system triggers so that
Mhm.
people feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me so I can have that connection that I so desire.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I think you're just reading my relationship right now. But I do, it is that like, open up, let's be vulnerable. And then they say something and I'm like, fuck you.
Hmm. That's
That is
it.
not what I wanted to hear. And I get mad
Yep.
that they're now having a feeling about something
Yep.
and that what I
Hmm.
wanted the whole time, but it's not the feeling
Yes.
that I wanted, you know?
That's right. That's
Mm,
exactly right.
how funny.
100%. And that's where I think that codependency piece comes in too,
Mm,
because it's like, oh, wow, what if I'm not responsible or in charge of what feelings they're having? Like, what if that's not
yeah.
my job to
Yeah.
manage their feelings? What if I can be receptive to their feelings and open and supportive, but it's not my job to manage them for
Yeah.
that person? Like, I think that part is really big too.
Yeah, and I'm learning that a lot right now, which is interesting
Hmm.
because I'm a freaking therapist. Is like that is my work with other people, right? I'm like, well, this
Yeah.
isn't mine, this
Yep.
isn't mine.
Hmm.
But obviously, it's a
Yep.
different contract. It's a different relationship.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, it's just so interesting, and I think it's so hard for me to let go. It's so hard for me to not care in the way of let me do this for
Yes.
you or I know what you need to do emotionally, right? And to really kind of step back and be like, this is on you. Like, or not on you, but you get to hold your own space in here. And I get to
Mhm.
take a step back.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
Is that
that's it.
true?
And I think, yes, it's so true. You're exactly right. You're doing the exact right thing. And I think I want to just say that it's so much easier said than
Then done.
done, right?
Yeah.
Because then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, we have to figure out how do I sit and tolerate the
Uh,
feelings that I'm having, the concerns that I'm having, the
yeah.
worries that I'm having about what's going on with you, and not let my own feelings of discomfort impact how I'm engaging with
Yeah.
you. Like there's so much distress tolerance that I think people with any of the insecure styles need to build. Like that's part of our work is to figure out like how do I manage my discomfort? And my discomfort is going to look different depending on my style. If
Yeah.
I'm more anxious, I might have these feelings of like, oh my gosh, are you going to leave? Are you upset with me? Are you mad? Are you
Yeah.
whatever? You know what I mean? And for somebody who is more avoidant, I just want to name, there's still so much anxiety happening
Yeah.
on the inside,
Yeah.
but that
Yes.
is more about like feeling safe to be vulnerable, to
Ugh.
connect, to be in relationship. And when you grow up with more of the avoidant style, you essentially learn it's not safe to be myself. I'm not safe to
Ugh.
be open in my relationships because I could potentially be rejected.
Ugh.
And so I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm going to learn how to regulate all of my feelings on my own and never need anybody
Yeah.
to do that with.
Mm-hmm. And do you see, is this typical too, like if like one attachment goes like to level 10, the other one, like they get more anxious and then they get more avoidant? Yes, right? That's a
Hmm. Oh,
chaser
very much so.
runner.
Yes, the anxious avoidant dance is one of
Yeah.
those things that you can find the anxious avoidant dynamic, and that's exactly what happens. And oftentimes, we sort of do this chasing thing.
Uh-huh.
So one
Uh-huh.
partner, the avoidant partner pulls away, and so the anxious partner chases them, and then they're like, "Well, you didn't give me any space. I need space from you."
Yeah.
And the person's like, "Well, you're leaving me and I can't deal with that. So I'm going to chase you, and then
Yes.
around and around we go." And so
Yeah.
I think that, and that's what I think Sue Johnson's work does so beautifully is, you know, you learn how to map out the cycle that's happening between the two of you
Uh-huh.
so that you can interrupt it effectively.
Right. Right. I love that. Okay. Let's switch gears to parenting because
Yeah.
what the hell is happening there?
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so much in here, I think. And so much I want to just name too, like I'm learning.
Yeah.
this in my own way. I have a 4-year old and a 1-year old. And
Ugh.
there's so much in here about recognizing the ways that you grew up and how you were parented,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then how you're parenting your own children and the emotional triggers that occur for you. Because now here you are, not only are you, potentially in a partnership, but then you're also building relationships with your children,
Mhm.
wanting them to be secure,
Mhm.
but also knowing that like
You're
you are an
human.
imperfect human,
Yeah.
right? Bringing your own stuff to the relationship with your kids too. It's
Yes.
very complex.
Yes. Yes. And I talked about that a lot, I think, in season one with my daughter. I was just like, I don't like this. I don't like who I am. I don't like
Yeah.
my anger. And I need to get
Hmm.
this figured out because
Yeah.
the dynamic for me is I don't know, it's the rejection, but she's hard to soothe. Like she won't let me soothe her. And so for
Hmm.
me, I'm like, what the I get
Yeah.
angry, like,
Yes.
"Well, I can just
Yes.
help you if you just let
Uh-huh.
me help you," which is like the codependent piece is like
Totally.
so
Yeah. Well, and it's like,
that's been
let me
fun.
in,
Yes.
right? Let
Oh,
me in. And I think when we feel that feeling, and
uh,
we're on the outside and we feel like someone is not letting us in, there can be deep feelings of rejection,
rejection. Mhm.
right? Deep feelings of like, do you even need me? Am I even important? Right? And then all of a sudden, we're a child again.
What is your
Yeah.
experience in parenting and your triggers? Like, how does that look like for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. It's so fascinating because I feel like, well, my parenting experience has been, I think, interesting in that, I had my first son 6 weeks before lockdown started. And
Oh,
so I had a very sort of, I felt like I had a very clear view of what my postpartum experience was going to be like and the support I
mhm.
was going to have. And, it's like our families got to meet him. And then lockdown happened. And then we were alone, like
Yeah.
so deeply alone.
Mhm.
And that was just like a result of what was happening in the world. And so I was pretty surprised by my own sort of tendency to even like dissociate. That was not a
Mhm.
thing that I had found happened to me
Shit.
often
Yeah.
until I was home all day
Postpartum
long, postpartum
with your first
with my
baby.
baby
Ugh.
who didn't sleep.
Oh my God.
And, it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, what is happening to me? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm checking out. And it wasn't like constantly, but I was just surprised that I was having that experience so often because that was not something that I was used to experiencing.
Yeah.
The other thing I think too is like now that I have a second
Uh-huh.
child, um, I'm recognizing that like I feel like through my life, I've had so much capacity for so much, and I am at the limits. Like I'm at the edges of my capacity now. And I'm
Welcome.
just like, okay, right? Like I'm
Yes.
having to let things go that,
Uh-huh.
before I've been one of those people who's just been like very
You do
productive and
seem
on
really
it and
kind
like
and sweet.
you're you're so sweet. I am not always kind and sweet to my children though, and I will just say that so
Same.
honestly because it is one of those things where I feel surprised by what comes out of my mouth sometimes. And I'm
Mhm.
just like, hello, you
Yeah.
are a therapist. Like you do
Yes.
not that is not a
Shaming
thing that
yourself.
you say, right? Oh, it's terrible how I do that to myself. Like, and then I find myself in this cycle where I'm like, I'm the worst mom
I'm the
ever, and
worst
everyone thinks
mom.
I'm a good therapist, and I'm actually a horrible
Terrible.
human. Um,
Yes. Oh my
which, of
God.
course, as you know, is not how that works. Like, it
Right.
doesn't. And one of the things I will
Ugh.
say that I think is so important as it relates to parenting and attachment is that repair is possible and
Ugh.
repair is so important. And I think it is an attachment concept,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like we are imperfect people
Listen.
and we're going to make mistakes.
Listen.
And in order for us to feel like we can be vulnerable in relationships, we also have to be open to making mistakes. And so when
Right.
we make mistakes, or, I lose my temper, or I snap at
Mhm.
one of my kids, or I'm just like, I need some space, or whatever, like I can circle back to that when I'm calmer and say, wow, I recognize what was happening for me then. That was totally not your fault. And I am so sorry that I raised my voice at you. And
Yeah.
I'm really going to work to do that differently next time.
Yeah.
So it's like
Hmm.
we get the opportunity to circle back and treat our children with respect in the same
Hmm.
way that we would treat our partners when we snap at them,
Yeah.
and be able to, come back and say, like, I realize how I was toward you, and that's not what I want to do.
Yes. Yes. The art of repair. We do that
Yeah.
often. I think
It's so
sometimes
important.
too, like when either of my kids is like just having a moment, there's sometimes where I'm like, I don't have the capacity to sit with you in this. Like,
Hmm.
like, it was yesterday. I was like, I ain't got it in me today. I just
Yep.
don't have it in me today. And there's other times where
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, what's happening? Let me hold
Yep.
space. Let me do this.
Yep.
And there's
Hmm.
just, it's never going to be the same and it's never going to be perfect. And I think knowing your own limits in that is also very important. But it is hard. It is hard. It is harder. I think I feel more shame in parenting in that
Hmm.
relationship than I do with my partner because in a partnership, it's like both of you are kind of to blame. Both of you are
Yes.
adults, both of you got to
Hmm.
work through your shit. In
Yep.
parenting, a lot of it's on you,
Yep. 100%. That's exactly right, as it should be,
as it
right? And
should
I
be.
think you're naming something really important here, because when I think about our attachment styles and I think about
Mhm.
upbringing stuff, some of us who had that have any of the insecure styles did not grow up in an environment where our parents believed that it was fully their responsibility to manage and handle their relationship with us, right?
Damn.
Sometimes we
Mhm.
grew up in environments where parents saw us as, like, equals or
Yes.
friends
Yeah.
or something like that. And so they expected that we were going to show up for the relationship the way that they do. But that's not
Mhm.
how that works, right? Like, it should be sort of like flowing down
Yeah.
to the child, like, I'm here and this is unconditional. It's not, I don't have to meet you there as a kid.
Yeah. Which is that harder to do if your relationship, like if your needs aren't getting met in a relationship, do you think that spills over into parenting?
Oh, definitely. I feel like it all blends together in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Mhm.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think too that when we maybe don't have that full awareness of what's going on for us, or we're seeing that, like, oh, my needs aren't being met here. And so I can go to my kid and get my needs met.
Yeah.
Where
Ugh.
it's like, oh, yeah, no, that's off limits. It's not, I mean, we all do it to some degree, but like,
Yes.
to be able to say to ourselves, that's off limits, like, it's not my child's responsibility to
Mhm.
fulfill me in this way. It's my job as an adult to communicate to my partner that I have unmet needs and for us to work through that.
Yes.
But I think that oftentimes, our parents in that generation,
Mhm.
they just didn't have access to the resources in the ways that we do now. Like,
Yeah.
we have so many books, so many resources, so many tools. And so I think that, our generation is really doing parenting so much differently, which is a
Mhm.
very lovely thing to witness.
Yes, it is. And it's also so fucking hard because it's like we're getting
It
shit
is
on by
so
our
hard.
parents and shit on by our
I know.
kids. It's like
I
sandwiched in
know.
it, but
Yeah.
we're being called to
Hmm.
it because we can,
Yep.
And
That's
I think
exactly right.
we're transforming a lot of that, which is exciting
But
and
it's hard
difficult.
to be that person who does that, right? It's hard
Yeah.
to be like the cycle breaker. It's hard to be,
Yeah.
especially when, I work with a lot of people who feel like, their childhood experiences won't ever be acknowledged by their parents.
Yeah.
They won't ever feel like their parents get it, or feel like
Mhm.
they are, really seen, or like their parents are open to apologizing to them, or, any of these
Mhm.
pieces. So it's difficult to transform that pain into something that feels like, like you're doing good with it. and
Yeah.
and that's what I think is really important about, like, having support
Mhm.
and understanding that, like, it's gonna feel like shit sometimes, and it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because
Mm.
you're transforming grief and loss and pain, and that is hard.
That's what we're doing.
That's right. We're out here.
We out here doing the Lord's work.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So sorry. I mean, that is so beautiful and it is so true. And I just love that you said that it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, you know? But it's like the journey that we signed up for essentially,
I
whether
know.
whether we knew it or not. But it's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
really coming from a desire to heal ourselves, like some
Hmm.
to feel better within ourselves and then to make our lives feel better. And our biggest influence is our children, for better for
Yes.
worse, you know? We
Oh my
can't really
gosh,
influence our
100%.
parents all that much.
Yep,
Um,
exactly. Well, and that I think is the beauty of that is that we can recognize like every single day we have a chance to do it differently, even if the
mm,
day before we don't feel proud of how we showed up. And
yeah.
gosh, children are just like the most, I mean, the times I've apologized so many times to my
Yeah.
kids, but they'll be like, "That's okay, mom."
Yes.
And you're just like, wow, like your ability to forgive, your ability
Yeah.
to like see me as a person is just what a beautiful gift. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I think that children have so much to teach us
Yeah.
in that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I probably have asked this question multiple times on the podcast, but
Yeah.
what happens if it's more of a parenting question, but my daughter's like, "Hey," like tantrumy a little, very loud. I come
Hmm.
towards her. She says, "Go away, leave me
Hmm.
alone."
Hmm.
And then I kind of do this with her and I say, "Okay, I'm here if you need me." And then I leave. And then I come back. I'm like, "Hey." Sometimes in the moment, I can't tolerate being screamed at. Like, I can't
Yeah.
tolerate like being there. So I have to leave.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm like, oh, I'm very impatient too. So it's something that I'm
Yeah.
working on.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering for her, like, am I showing up for her in the right way? Like,
Mm.
it's so hard because she's like, she clearly she doesn't want to be alone, but she does. Is she have a disorganized attachment and already fucked up?
Oh my gosh, no, that's not what I hear in that. I think, do you feel like she's sensitive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Deep feeler.
Oh yeah, big
Deep
time. Yeah,
feeler.
I have
Yeah.
two. I have two like that. And I think so I think that temperament is a whole other
Mm,
layer of this conversation. Like every person is different. And so for her, and of course I'm not her therapist or anything
I
on
know.
this.
I was like, just
But
tell me
like
though.
I know. I'm thinking about like her tolerance for being overstimulated. And there are kids
Huh.
who, when something's going on for them, they don't want attention drawn to them. It feels
That
overwhelming.
is
So
her.
like
Yes.
not only
Yes.
are they having the experience internally, but then to consider what's happening externally is just like
It's
overflowing the cup, right? So
absolutely.
I think that there's something in there about recognizing when she's having a hard time, the thing that helps her the most is not having you be
What's wrong?
right there.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like it's too much for her. She can't manage your feelings, your
Yeah.
experience of her experience.
Yes. Ooh.
So for you, I love what you're doing, right? Of like giving her the space and reminding her, I'm here. And the practice for you, I imagine, is regulating your nervous
Yeah.
system while she is working on regulating hers. And if you're
Yep.
also a sensitive person, which I bet you are,
Yes.
like you might need to, put in some like noise canceling or like reducing headphones or be able to, practice your own breathing or, something along those lines where you can also have this conversation with her like sometimes when I get overwhelmed, these are the things that help me. You'll see me practicing these things, and it's because we all need help with that
Yeah.
sometimes. So I think that there's something really lovely about you respecting that she doesn't want you
Yeah.
right there, but she does want you near.
Yeah.
And kids need their parents, right? They need that
Yeah.
secure base, right, which is
Right.
an attachment concept. They need them close by, but you're respecting her unique nervous system and her needs by not put like overriding her boundaries that
Bethune.
she's trying to set with you. Like I think you're
Yeah.
being respectful.
Okay. This is so good because it brings up a lot of, I think in my own attachment style, I'm like, man, I wish my mom was there more. Like, what? So I should be doing this for her because I am available now. So it's like having to like stay there, or in my mind, I'm thinking about my own self and my own child, my own inner child, which again is important for me to take care of, not in this situation, because she's clearly telling me I actually don't want that. And I think I have experience too with my mom, the same, similar, like, what's wrong? Like, it's a lot. And I'm
Mhm.
like, ugh,
Yeah.
like, so
Yep.
I
It
just,
feels like too much. You're like,
yes,
please, just like, well, and
chill
I
out.
think too, that also makes me think about how you might need to tend to your inner
I
child
mean,
while she's
yes.
having her feelings. Like when your daughter's having her feelings, like your inner child might be like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
And you might have to be like, yep, she's having a hard time and we're here for her and we're respecting her boundaries and this is how we're doing that. Right. And so
Yeah.
you're
Yes.
like, you're sort of managing whatever is arising for your own inner child at the same time
Yes.
as you're supporting your actual child.
Yes,
It's just that it's a
exactly.
lot. Yeah, you're doing a lot at once.
This is it. This is the hard
Yep.
work.
Yep.
But I think it's, again, a good reminder, no matter how many times you hear it, that you can tend to yourself or get to tend to yourself as you're tending to your child, and really separating that out is very important, because I think sometimes when we look at our child and they're maybe not responding the way we want them to, right? Then it must be doing something wrong. Versus, I love what you said. It's like she has fucking boundaries, girl. She's like, stay away. It's too much. And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh my god, great, great. I'm not doing anything wrong." You know what I mean? But
That's right.
there's it's so mixed that it just takes
Yeah.
a lot of work in like piecing things out, which I think is so
Mhm.
valuable in going to therapy or having on the podcast,
Yes.
babe, Elizabeth. Girl.
Right? Exactly. Well, and I think too, you're also naming, I love how you just said that because you're separating your own inner child experience from your daughter's experience because those are two
Yeah.
different people,
Yes.
right? And what you needed as a child, you might try to give a lot of that to
Yeah.
your child, but your child is a
She's
different
like, "I don't want
person,
that."
right? She's telling you, like, here's my boundaries. And so the best thing you can do in parenting her is
Yeah.
respect her boundaries, right? And so
Yes.
you're like, you're doing the work, and that's part of how you're breaking that cycle is that you're
Yeah.
not overriding the boundaries or enmeshing or blending or any of those things with
Ugh.
her, right? You're saying, like, oh, yeah, I see that you're a separate person, and
Yeah.
I see that you have unique needs.
Mhm. Which again, I think comes from a beautiful place for our generation of like, "Oh, I wanna give you all the things I didn't get."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, "Cool, cool, cool," but what if they don't want that?
Hmm.
How can you really break the
Yeah.
cycle? This is what I'm hearing from you, Elizabeth, is like really
Yeah.
breaking the cycle is tending to your own needs and looking at what their needs are.
Yes. And I think
Yeah.
observing your kids
But
is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do is to see, like, how are they really, right? Like, what are they like? What are they into? How do they respond when these situations happen? How do they, instead of trying to like change them or getting them to do things in a certain way, you're like
yeah.
showing up for the child that's right in front of you. And I
Yeah.
think that's really, really powerful.
Yes. Yes. So powerful. Elizabeth, tell us about what you're doing now. Like, how can people work with you? You also do coaching. What tell us everything. I also want to just hang out.
Yeah.
This has been so fun.
I know you are so wonderful, and I love chatting with you. And hopefully we can do it again sometime
Yes,
about who knows what.
I know.
So okay, let's see. What am I up to? So, um, I have a book, which we didn't even talk about, but I have
Oh
a book.
my God. You're
Yes,
an
yes.
author.
So I am an author. It's
Congrats.
called Attachment Theory Workbook for Couples. So
Oh,
I wrote it specifically for folks who are wanting to work on their communication, their understanding of each other in relationships from an attachment perspective. So it has descriptions of all of the attachment styles in it, but the thing I like about it and the thing I think that makes it unique is that the second half of the book talks about interactions between the
oh,
specific styles. So it's
cool.
like, I'm disorganized and my partner is anxious. So what might we see? How can we sort of focus on our relationship? And, it goes through these different combinations. So
That's awesome.
that is something that is available on Amazon or through your local bookstore. And I have attachment courses. So I have an anxious attachment course, an avoidant
Nice.
attachment course, and a secure attachment course if you're wanting to become more secure. So those are available on my websites. I also do, yes, I do therapy. I do coaching.
Listen,
Coaching is more for like not wanting to work so much on like the mental health piece, but like
listen.
how can I make my relationships healthier? So I love that both of those options exist. I have a very extensive blog all about attachment stuff, like all kinds of topics that you
Nice.
could possibly think of. And I'm also co-hosting a retreat this fall that's attachment based. Yes.
What? Tell us more.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I'm located. Um, and so it's going to be a full weekend of like you being just
Mm.
like cared for, which
Oh
I
my
am so
God.
excited to do. Yeah, it's going to be lovely. It's in the mountains. There's a gorgeous river that runs
Ah,
along the retreat center. It's just going to be, it's wonderful. So I can send you the links for all of
yeah.
those things.
And put in
But
the show notes.
yeah, Heirloom Counseling is my therapy business, and that's where I have
Oh,
all of my blog posts and things like that. And then elizabethgillette.com is my coaching business. So lots of different
yes.
ways. And of course, I'd just love to hear from you anyway, even if you don't want to, work with me. I'd love to hear from you. And if you
Yeah.
have questions or, things that would be supportive, reach out to me and let me know because
I love that.
my mind is always going and I'm always wanting to offer new and different things.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Wait, is the retreat for couples or single? How does that work?
It's for anybody who
Oh,
wants to come. So it's not
okay.
designed for couples. Right now we
Okay.
have lots of folks registered who are just
This
wanting to do something that feels like, um, it's tending to them and feeling
yeah,
like they are learning about themselves and taking care of themselves. And I think that this attachment focused kind of perspective can just feel really supportive.
nurturing. Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, very much so. We have a chef who is going to like
oh,
be creating our meals based on this like this idea of like really caring for yourself and feeling nurtured. And I'm
I
so
love
so
it.
excited about it.
Are
Yeah.
you co-hosting it with someone?
Yeah, so I'm
Let's see.
co-hosting it with my colleague Monica LeBlanc.
Okay.
Who is also a therapist and a coach. And
Uh
we have done attachment coaching groups together.
huh.
And so
Cool.
the attachment coaching groups are that container is called Held. And
Oh,
so this is the Held retreat.
oh my God, so
And yeah,
beautiful.
it's really lovely. And so we have worked together and done, these groups together where it's a, like multi modality kind of approach. So
Yeah.
we talk about internal family systems and the Enneagram. And
Oh, nice.
we have our dear friend and mentor, who's an astrologist, is going to
Okay,
come.
tell
And
me everything.
I know, like
Okay.
she's so wonderful. Liz Gunn is her name. If you are
Okay.
looking for somebody who need a reading from, she is incredible. So yeah, it's just gonna be like the
Ah,
best
I love
weekend.
woo.
I
Okay.
cannot wait. Yes.
Okay. I recorded a podcast recently. It has not aired yet, and I did it like a quick fire, and then I only thought of two things, and I was like, this isn't a quick fire. But I'm gonna do a quick fire of you because I just
Oh
want to
gosh.
know,
Okay. Okay, do
like,
it.
I know, but can I be quick enough in my brain? Okay. What Enneagram number are you?
So I actually recently found out that I'm a 3. I thought I was a 2
Two. Most women
forever,
do. Yeah.
but I'm actually a 3. And my friend Monica helped me realize that. So I'm a
Okay.
self-preservation 3,
Three.
which doesn't quite look like a 3, but I totally am.
A three. Are three wing two? Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
What is your astrology signs? Dude.
So I am a Leo sun,
Oh.
I'm a Leo rising,
Oh.
and an Aquarius moon.
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Hmm.
two I'm triple fire. So I love that. I'm a Leo moon, but that's not
Wonderful.
you, right? Yeah, you're rising and sun.
No, I'm an Aquarius moon, but I feel like, yeah, so my friend Liz, who's an astrologer, tells me that I have
Mhm.
a ton of fixed energy in my chart, if
Yeah.
anyone knows about that. So I can be a real pain in the ass, but I
Yeah.
also am super driven. And most
Yes.
of the things I want to do, I get done, which has been very helpful, especially in my threeness.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I think even looking at your Instagram, like very Leo energy, like here I am. It's just, and you've like made a beautiful community out of that. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
do
you.
you believe in past lives? These are
Oh,
so random.
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes, totally.
Have
Yes,
you
yes,
done
yes.
a past life regression?
I have not,
Okay.
but I have heard about them. I feel like, and Asheville is such an interesting place, right? Because I'm
Good.
positive there are folks who could help me like
Yes.
do that,
Yeah.
access that, but I have not done it myself. But
Okay.
I'm so interested
Oh my
to
gosh, I love it.
to hear. Have
Okay.
you?
I have. Yes.
Would you recommend it?
Yes. I mean, yeah, it feels like you're making it all up, to be honest. But it is really cool. I mean, I still kind of, and you can go back to the recording and I remember everything. Some people don't remember. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things in there. I mean, I was a
Wow.
fairy. I was an alien.
What?
I was someone who's like really well known in the community, a male, and I was older and I got like beheaded because I was like starting like this uprising and like really having people
Whoa.
love who they are. Um, yeah, I can't remember. There's a couple other ones.
Oh my
But yeah, it was
gosh.
really cool.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, I'm like big in all the freaking woo stuff. I'm just trying
Oh
all
my
the things. I'm
gosh.
like, oh, this is interesting, and I just kind of take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And
Truly. Try the things. I
yeah,
literally just wrote a blog post last week about how every modality is a framework, right? And we can get something
listen,
from everything that we choose, and not everything is going to resonate with us.
right.
I got a lot of negative feedback about having like incorporating astrology into our group coaching program. And I was
Hmm.
like, y'all, it doesn't, you don't have to take it that seriously. Like, if you
No.
don't like it, it's okay. You don't have to do it. It's not,
Yes.
astrology has been so supportive for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it gives me sort of a bigger picture perspective of
Yeah.
my work and this world and everything else. And, try all the things and see what helps and see what is supportive. There's so much out there.
Yes. And that's the thing too. I think astrology was helpful for me in my personality. Why I'm so
Yeah.
quick to light the
Yes.
spark here
Yep.
in all the ways.
Totally.
Yeah, and there's so many patterns there. When you talk about secure attachment or attachment patterns, it's the same thing. It's like, what is this pattern?
Yep.
Okay, human design. Do you know your human design? Have you heard of that?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is why I have like 100 projects going on at one
Yeah.
time. And I'm always just like thinking up ideas and being like, "Oh, that'd be cool. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try," even if it feels like totally disconnected from what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to always like have lots of irons in the fire.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. Okay. I
Yeah.
just think there's a wave of like definitely like spiritual stuff, astrology. And I think it's like just ride this wave and like if it works with you, cool. If it doesn't,
Hmm.
don't. If
Yeah.
someone tells you and predicts the future, like maybe settle in a little bit, like
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever's helpful for your mental health and your personality. And that's like
Hmm.
if it was attachment, if you like this episode and you're like, oh my God, attachment, that really hits. You hit a lot of things very true for me throughout this whole
Yeah.
episode. I was like,
Yeah.
dang, maybe I should know
Yeah,
more
there's
about
so,
attachment.
so much out there. And the one last thing I'll leave you with,
Yeah.
since you're kind of talking about resources, is that please, if you are interested in attachment, please be really mindful of like the quality of the resources that you
Uh,
are checking out. Because I have seen, unfortunately, that there are some not so great resources out there that are kind of like demonizing of certain attachment styles. So if
yeah.
you start reading something and you're like, wow, they're really mean about this attachment style, or it sounds like they don't really like people with this attachment style,
Uh-huh.
that's probably not the thing to read. There are some
Yes.
really wonderful tools and resources out there, and if something seems biased, it probably is. So just be mindful of what you're consuming, because of course we're going to bring our own pain and hurt and wounding to things, and I think it's really important that we are getting like good quality information that's actually supportive for our relationships.
That's such a good reminder and a good perspective in everything. If you feel like it's not coming from love, from a
Yeah.
grounded and loving space, it is not for you.
Yep.
And move on because
That's
somebody
it.
didn't work through their shit and publish
Yep.
something that
Yep.
they
That's
shouldn't have.
exactly right. And I have seen some people circle back around and be like, wow, I wish we had done that differently when
Yeah.
we published this book or when we did. And I'm like, that's good.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is so fun.
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh,
gosh.
Jen, thank you. This was
The
wonderful.
best.
I'm so grateful for you. And thank you for just
Yeah.
being who you are. You are such a joy to talk with, and your
Aw,
questions are so good. And it's just like, it was just a lovely conversation. Thank you
thank
for having
you.
me.
Of course. Yay. Okay, so we'll put all of that in the show notes as well. And yeah, let's do this again.
That sounds great. I'm so down.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you were able to accept more parts of yourself and see how you can work with your attachment style. If you are feeling stuck, check out Elizabeth's attachment courses or reach out for therapy or coaching. And if you are loving the podcast, please give us a review up on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue to reach and help others. We'll see you next time.